Marcus Johnson's alarm went off at 5:15 a.m., just as it had every weekday for the past 2 years. At 41, his body clock was set more by necessity than habit. Getting ready took longer now, had to, since the IED blast in Helmand Province took both his legs below the knee. He sat on the edge of his bed in the small apartment, looking down at the prosthetic legs that would carry him through another day. Carbon fiber and titanium, state-of-the-art technology that the VA had provided, but they still felt foreign after 3 years. The phantom pain was manageable today. Some days were worse than others. Marcus strapped on his prosthetics with the methodical precision of someone who'd done it 1,000 times, left leg first, then right, checking the fit and seal. He stood slowly, reaching for the carbon fiber walking cane that had become as much a part of him as his dog tag. The face in the bathroom mirror showed a man who'd aged beyond his years, gray stubble on a weathered face, eyes that had seen too much, crow's feet that came from squinting through rifle scopes in desert sun. But there was still strength there, still purpose. Sergeant Marcus Bullseye Johnson had spent 12 years as a Marine sniper, with confirmed kills in Iraq and Afghanistan that would remain classified forever. His record was legendary among those who knew such things. 247 confirmed eliminations, many at distances that defied belief. He had earned his nickname during his second deployment when he'd consistently hit targets at over 1,200 meters. That career had ended in a flash of light and heat on a dusty road outside Kajaki. The IED had been buried deep, triggered by pressure from their convoy's lead vehicle. Marcus had been walking point, scouting ahead when the blast threw him 30 feet and changed his life forever. 2 years in Walter Reed, learning to walk again. Physical therapy that was more brutal than any training he'd endured as a Marine. Psychological counseling to deal with the transition from elite warrior to disabled veteran. The military had offered him a desk job, but Marcus couldn't stomach the idea of pushing papers when he'd spent his career saving lives through precision and action. The disability checks helped, but they weren't enough. Marcus needed to work, needed purpose. When the position for a specialized school bus driver came up, specifically requesting disabled veterans for the district's adaptive transportation program, Marcus had jumped at the opportunity. The job required driving a specially equipped bus designed for students with disabilities, but the district had expanded the program to include regular routes driven by disabled veterans. It was part of a federal initiative to provide employment opportunities while giving kids positive role models. Marcus's bus was modified with hand controls, allowing him to operate it without using his legs for gas and brake pedal. The students didn't know about his military background. To them, he was just Mr. Johnson, the quiet driver who always made sure they got to school safely. That Tuesday morning in October started like any other. Marcus performed his pre-trip inspection of Bus 47, checking mirrors, lights, and the hand control system. The bus itself was a standard school bus, painted the familiar yellow, but equipped with the adaptive controls that allowed Marcus to drive safely, despite his prosthetic leg. His route covered the rural outskirts of Millbrook County, picking up 23 students from kindergarten through 8th grade. Most were farm kids, children of families who worked the land or small businesses that supported the agricultural community. Marcus knew every child by name, knew their personalities, their fears, their dreams. There was Emma, the shy second grader who always sat behind him and quietly told him about her drawings. Tommy, the 6th grader who'd been acting out since his father deployed overseas. Sarah and Michael, the 8th grade twins who were starting to notice each other in ways that made them awkward around adults. They were his responsibility, and Marcus took that responsibility as seriously as he'd once taken protecting his fellow Marines in combat. The first sign that something was wrong came at 7:42 a.m., just after Marcus had picked up the Henderson kids from their farm on Route 34. A black SUV had been following them for the past 3 miles, maintaining distance but never passing despite clear opportunity. Marcus's training kicked in automatically. He learned to notice patterns, to identify threats before they materialized. The SUV's behavior was wrong, following but not overtaking, maintaining visual contact but not normal traffic flow. He made a mental note of the license plate and checked his mirrors more frequently. The children chattered normally behind him, unaware of his growing concern. Marcus reached for the radio to contact dispatch, but hesitated. What would he say? that he had a feeling, that his instincts were triggered by a vehicle that might have a perfectly innocent explanation for its presence? Marcus decided to alter his route slightly, taking a detour through town instead of the usual back roads. If the SUV was following them specifically, the deviation would confirm it. If not, he'd apologize to dispatch later for being paranoid. The SUV followed. Marcus's pulse quickened, but his hands remained steady on the wheel. 12 years of combat had taught him to function under pressure, to think clearly when adrenaline wanted to cloud his judgment. He keyed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Bus 47. Go ahead, 47. I have a possible situation. Black SUV, license plate ... Marcus rattled off the numbers he'd memorized. "Vehicle has been following my route for approximately 8 miles, through course changes, requesting instruction." There was a pause. "Bus 47, are you certain about pursuit?" "Affirmative. Vehicle behavior is inconsistent with normal traffic patterns." "Bus 47, maintain course to Millbrook Elementary. We're contacting local law enforcement for escort." Marcus felt some relief, but he knew help was at least 15 minutes away. A lot could happen in 15 minutes. It happened at the intersection of County Road 7 and Highway 12, just 5 miles from the school. The black SUV suddenly accelerated, pulling alongside the bus. Marcus had a clear view through the passenger window and saw what made his blood run cold. 3 men in the SUV, all armed. The passenger window was rolling down, and Marcus could see a rifle barrel emerging. Training took over. Marcus yanked the wheel to the right, using the bus's bulk to force the SUV toward the shoulder. At the same time, he shouted to the children, "Everyone down! Get down now! Stay in your seats but get as low as possible." The children, trained for emergency drills, dropped below the seat backs. Their voices rose in fear and confusion, but they followed instructions. The SUV recovered and pulled ahead, stopping diagonally across the road to block Marcus's path. 3 men got out, all wearing tactical gear and carrying assault rifles. They moved with military precision. These weren't random criminals or desperate addicts. These were professionals. Marcus brought the bus to a stop about 50 yards from the roadblock. His mind raced through options, calculating angles and possibilities. The bus offered some protection, but it wasn't armored. The children were scattered throughout the vehicle, making any kind of evasive action impossible without putting them at risk. The leader of the group, a tall man with a beard and wraparound sunglasses, approached the bus with his rifle at the ready. He signaled for Marcus to open the door. Marcus complied, but he positioned himself carefully. His walking cane was within reach, and though his legs wouldn't support rapid movement, his upper body, strength, and reflexes were still those of an elite warrior. "Step out of the bus," the man commanded. His voice carried authority and a slight accent, Eastern European, possibly Russian. "What do you want?" Marcus asked, not moving from his seat. "We want the children. Step away from the bus and you won't be harmed." Marcus's blood ran cold. This wasn't a robbery or carjacking. This was a kidnapping operation targeting the school bus specifically. Someone wanted these children, or one of them in particular. Behind him, Marcus could hear quiet sobs and whispered prayers from the kid. Emma, his shy second grader, was crying for her mommy. Tommy was trying to comfort the younger children, showing the maturity that military kids learned early. "I can't do that," Marcus said simply. The bearded man raised his rifle, aiming it directly at Marcus's chest. "You don't understand. This is not a negotiation. Give us the children." Marcus looked at the man down the barrel of the rifle, just as he'd looked at enemies through his scope for 12 years. The familiar calm descended over him, the same state of mind that had made him legendary among Marine snipers. "No," Marcus said quietly. For a moment, the gunman seemed surprised by the refusal. He was used to compliance when faced with overwhelming firepower. But he didn't know he was dealing with a man who'd spent over a decade in situations where the odds were impossible, and survival depended on refusing to surrender. "You're disabled," the man said, gesturing at Marcus's walking cane. "You cannot fight us. Be smart." "You're right," Marcus agreed. "I can't run. I can't chase you, but I can do other things." Before the gunman could react, Marcus pulled the bus door closed and hit the emergency brake release. The bus lurched forward as Marcus used the hand controls to accelerate directly at the SUV blocking the road. The 3 gunmen scattered as 40,000 pounds of school bus bore down on their vehicle. Marcus wasn't trying to hit them. Killing wasn't the objective here, but he needed to create chaos, to disrupt their plan, and buy time for help to arrive. The bus clipped the SUV's rear quarter panel, spinning the vehicle around and sending it into the ditch. Marcus immediately threw the bus into reverse, backing up to create distance between his students and the gunman. Over the radio, he could hear frantic chatter as dispatch tried to coordinate with law enforcement. But Marcus knew help was still several minutes away, and the gunmen were already regrouping. The bearded leader was shouting at his companions in what sounded like Russian. They spread out, trying to surround the bus. Marcus realized they were professionals, probably mercenaries or foreign operators. This was a planned operation, not an opportunistic crime. One of the gunmen moved to the rear of the bus, trying to access the emergency exit. Marcus could see him in the mirror, attempting to force the rear door. The children were screaming now, no longer able to maintain the calm of a drill. Marcus made a decision that went against every instinct for self-preservation he'd developed. He opened the bus door and stepped out. The prosthetic legs made his movements slow and awkward. He had to use his walking cane for balance, and each step was deliberate rather than fluid. But his upper body was still strong, his reflexes still sharp, and his mind still had the tactical awareness that had kept him alive through dozens of combat missions. "I'm out," Marcus called to the gunman. "Leave the children alone." The bearded leader approached, keeping his rifle trained on Marcus. "Finally, you see reason. Now step away from the bus." Instead of moving away, Marcus positioned himself directly in front of the bus door. His prosthetic legs locked in place, and he planted his walking cane firmly on the asphalt. "You want the kids," Marcus said calmly. "You go through me." The gunman smiled coldly. "You cannot stop us. You can barely stand." "Maybe," Marcus agreed, "but I can make this very expensive for you." What happened next took less than 3 seconds, but would be replayed in Marcus's mind for the rest of his life. The gunman stepped closer, apparently intending to simply push Marcus aside. He underestimated 2 things: Marcus's upper body strength and his knowledge of anatomy gained from years of precision shooting. As the man reached out to shove him away from the door, Marcus grabbed the rifle barrel with his left hand while simultaneously striking with his walking cane. The blow landed precisely at the junction of the gunman's neck and shoulder, hitting the brachial plexus with enough force to temporarily paralyze his right arm. The rifle went off, but Marcus had pushed the barrel skyward. The bullet harmlessly shattered a tree branch overhead. Marcus couldn't pursue or continue the fight. His legs simply wouldn't support that kind of movement. But he didn't need to. The gunman stumbled backward, his right arm useless, shock and pain evident on his face. The other 2 gunmen rushed toward the bus, but Marcus had bought precious time. In the distance, sirens were finally audible. More importantly, the children had had time to follow the emergency protocols Marcus had drilled with them. Through the bus windows, Marcus could see that the older kids had moved the younger ones to the floor between the seats, providing additional protection. Tommy had taken charge, just as Marcus had hoped he would when they'd practiced these scenarios. The second gunman raised his weapon, aiming at Marcus. At this range, maybe 15 feet, even Marcus's legendary marksmanship skills wouldn't matter. He was armed only with a walking cane and courage. But sometimes courage is enough. "You want to explain to your employer why you killed a disabled veteran in front of 23 children?" Marcus asked calmly. "You think that makes your operation easier or harder?" The gunman hesitated. Marcus had guessed correctly. This was about kidnapping, not murder. Dead children were harder to collect ransom on, and killing a disabled school bus driver would bring the kind of media attention that professional criminals avoided. The sirens were getting louder. The bearded leader, still clutching his paralyzed arm, shouted something in Russian. The other 2 gunmen looked between Marcus and their boss, clearly uncertain about their next move. Marcus made the decision for them. "Boys and girls," he called out loudly enough for the children to hear inside the bus, "can you sing our safety song?" It was something Marcus had taught them during the first week of school, a silly song about staying safe and listening to instructions. But it served 2 purposes. It kept the children calm and focused, and it demonstrated to the gunman that Marcus still had control of the situation. 23 young voices rose in song, slightly off-key but strong and defiant. The sound of children singing in the face of terror apparently had an effect on the gunman that Marcus's physical resistance hadn't achieved. The bearded leader cursed in Russian and gestured to his men. They began moving back toward their damaged SUV. "This is not over," he called to Marcus. "Yes, it is," Marcus replied with absolute certainty. The sirens were very close now. The gunmen reached their vehicle and managed to get it started despite the damage from the bus collision. They drove off just as the first police car came around the bend. Marcus remained standing in front of the bus door until he was certain the threat was gone. Only then did he allow himself to sink onto the bus steps, his prosthetic legs finally giving out from the stress and adrenaline. The children crowded to the front of the bus, no longer afraid now that the police were there. Emma threw her small arms around Marcus's neck. "You saved us, Mr. Johnson," she whispered. "We all saved each other," Marcus replied, his voice thick with emotion. "That's what families do." Deputy Sheriff Kate Morrison was the first officer to reach the bus. She found Marcus still sitting on the steps, surrounded by children who refused to leave his side. "Sir, I'm Deputy Morrison. Are you injured?" Marcus shook his head. "I'm fine. The children are all safe. 3 gunmen, appeared to be foreign operatives, attempted kidnapping. They fled in a damaged black SUV, license plate ... He rattled off the numbers he'd memorized. Morrison called it in while paramedics checked Marcus and the children. None of the kids were physically injured, though they'd need counseling to deal with the trauma of the experience. "Sir," Morrison said as she finished taking his preliminary statement, "what you did here. I've never seen anything like it. How did you know what to do?" Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then glanced at the children who were being comforted by other officers and paramedics. Tommy caught his eye and gave him a small salute. Somehow the boy had figured out that Mr. Johnson was more than just a bus driver. "I used to have a different job," Marcus said simply, "but this one's more important." 6 hours later, Marcus was finally released from the sheriff's station after giving his full statement to FBI agents who'd driven down from the regional office. The attempted kidnapping was being treated as a federal case, possibly involving foreign nationals. Marcus drove his personal vehicle, a modified pickup truck with hand controls, back to the bus depot. His supervisor, Janet Williams, was waiting for him in the parking lot. "Marcus," she said, walking over as he climbed slowly out of his truck. "I don't even know what to say. The news is calling you a hero." "I was just doing my job," Marcus replied. Janet smiled. "Your job is to drive children safely to and from school. Fighting off armed kidnappers isn't in the job description." Marcus considered this. Maybe it should be. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the bus depot to find a small crowd waiting for him. Parents, children, and school district officials had gathered to thank him personally. There were flowers, handmade cards, and more tears than Marcus was comfortable with. But what moved him most was seeing his 23 kids again, all safe and ready to get back on bus 47 for the ride to school. "Mr. Johnson," Tommy asked as they settled into their seats, "are you really a war hero like my dad says?" Marcus adjusted his rearview mirror so he could see all the children. "I'm a school bus driver," he said, "and that makes me the luckiest man in the world." As bus 47 pulled out of the depot for its normal route, now with a police escort, Marcus caught sight of his reflection in the side mirror. The same weathered face, the same eyes that had seen too much, but something had changed. For 3 years, Marcus had been defined by what he'd lost in Afghanistan. Today, he was defined by what he'd protected in a rural school district in America. His legs might be titanium and carbon fiber, but his heart was still that of a warrior. And sometimes, that's exactly what children need. Someone willing to stand between them and the darkness, no matter the cost. The investigation later revealed that the attempted kidnapping had been targeting Emma, the shy second grader whose father was a defense contractor working on classified projects. The gunmen were indeed foreign operatives, though they were never captured. But they never came back. Sometimes the best defense isn't the ability to chase down the enemy. Sometimes it's the willingness to stand your ground when running isn't an option. Marcus Johnson understood that better than most.